So Donald Trump, you heard it there. We'll give you a little taster as well of a little bit more about what he said, officially announcing that he's running for president for the third time in 2024. In a speech, he attacked President Biden, the radical left Democrats, and their record on the economy, plus the world stage. This is 2 years, of course, since he left office. The former president ignored Republican critics and those who blamed him for the Republicans' disappointing midterms to go full steam on stating his intent to get back into the Oval Office. He said he wants to drain the swamp and the country is being destroyed before our very lives. In order to make America great and glorious again, he said, I'm announcing my candidacy for presidency. He confirmed to huge cheers, laying into the FBI raid, the fake dossier and deep state and lobbyists. Goodness me. Everyone is a bad un, according to Donald. But, of course, there's huge problems with all of this. Donald Trump isn't quite the unifying candidate he once was. Well, some would say he never was. I'm talking about unifying Republicans. Many are very upset about how those midterm elections panned out, with lots of prominent voices blaming Mr. Trump for the Republicans' failure to annihilate the Democrats. So let's have a little listen to what he said down there in Florida.
In order to make America great and glorious again, I am tonight announcing my candidacy for President of the United States. 2 years ago, when I left office, the United States stood ready for its golden age. Our nation was at the pinnacle of power, prosperity, and prestige, towering above all rivals, vanquishing all enemies, and striding into the future, confident and so strong. In 4 short years, everybody was doing great. Men, women, African Americans, Asian Americans, Hispanic Americans. Everybody was thriving like never before. China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea were in check and respected. They respected the United States, and quite honestly, they respected me. I knew them well. I knew them well.
Me. They respected me. Did they? What did it look like when he entered office with a federal budget deficit of $584 billion and left with one at $3.3 trillion? Federal public debt, $19.9 trillion when he entered office, $27.7 trillion when he left. But there were good news stories there as well. Americans without health insurance, as an example. When he entered office, there were 28 million Americans without health insurance. When he left, 26 million Americans. You want to look at people living below the poverty line. There were 40.6 million when he entered office. There were 34 million when he left. Did he do good? Did he do bad? But would he be good for the UK? That's what I want to know. 0344 499 1000. It gets worse in some respects. How much of a Republican is Donald Trump? The most successful Republican candidate in America right now is Ron DeSantis down there in Florida. He's polling way above Donald Trump. And what happened yesterday after he was re-elected? Donald Trump came out. What happened on the day after he was elected? Donald Trump came out, of course, and attacked Ron DeSantis. A lengthy statement, do you remember? When he dismissed the Florida governor as being a political lightweight who'd come to him in desperate shape when running for his first term in office back in 2017. Trump said Ron had low approval, bad polls, no money. But he said that if I would endorse him, he could win. Mr. Trump said, I also fixed his campaign, which had completely fallen apart. He went on to complain about Mr. DeSantis, who he nicknames Ron DeSanctimonious, was playing games by refusing to rule out a presidential bid. And Trump talks about loyalty. Good Lord, that's a fellow Republican right there. A fellow Republican who at the moment has got more chance of winning the presidency than Mr. Trump. But of course, it's not just that that will haunt Donald Trump. He was mostly responsible for those riots on Capitol Hill. People died. Remember, this was the man who was impeached in part for withholding that Ukrainian aid, $400 million worth of aid, unless Zelensky played dirty by investigating Joe Biden. Remember that phone call? And, of course, Trump has described Putin's invasion of Ukraine as genius and savvy. Today, he says that Putin would not have invaded Ukraine if he was in power. Trump stands to split the vote, and there is the biggest problem for the United States, which could, just by default, give the United States and the rest of the world another Democrat in the White House for another 4 years. What I think is likely to happen here is Mr. Trump will continue with this mood music. He'll continue to talk about how he's the man. He's got ahead of the game. He's campaigning from now, and he won't stop campaigning every opportunity he gets. But will he be selected? Will he be the one with his name on the final ticket? And if he senses that it's not going that way, you know what the guy's going to do? He's going to stand as an independent. And then what happens? All the Trump supporters will clearly go with the Donald. The others will go with Ron DeSantis, one assumes, if he is the guy whose name is on the ticket. And that'll be that. It'll be curtains for the Republicans, and the Democrats are back in the game again. 0344 499 1000. But is Trump good for the UK? We kind of loosely touched on this last week when we were talking about that battle of Trump versus Biden. It was only speculation then as to whether Donald Trump would stand as president. Now we know he's going to run. So in terms of our relationship, in terms of the wider world, in terms of security around the world, in terms of what it says for Western values, if you like. I mean, let's be honest. He can't be any worse than Joe Biden. When Trump was in power, Trump was, in many respects, an awful candidate. He was an awful man. He wasn't a particularly nice bloke. His backstory was nefarious, dubious, dirty, grime. It was all of that. But there is a rather reluctant but in all of this. He was a powerhouse. He was a big figure. And you know that point he made there? They respected the United States over there in Russia, over there in China, over there in North Korea. And he might just have a point on that. He might just have a point. And that is significant for the rest of the world. So in that respect, I would rather have Donald Trump in the White House than Joe Biden. But I'd rather have Ron DeSantis in the White House. By the way, thank goodness for Ron DeSantis. Finally, you're allowed to diss Trump, knowing that it doesn't make you a Biden supporter, which seems to be the rather curious and slightly anti-intellectual allegation every time you say something bad against Donald. We must be a Trump supporter then. We must be a Biden supporter. No, another Republican, frankly. DeSantis is the man. He's the guy that's got all the credentials. He ticks every box. He's got a clean sheet. He looks like the guy that's in charge. He's got electoral success under his belt, and he's polling better than Donald Trump right now. Surely he would be the man we want to see in the White House. But let's assume for one moment, take our imaginations forward to 2024, and Trump does it again. There he goes, back to Washington, back to the Oval Office, back to the big seat in power, back to the leader of the Western world. Is Donald Trump good for the UK? 0344 499 1000. In a moment, we'll chat to Greg Swenson. He's the chair of Republicans Abroad. We'll get his take on this. And remember, Trump is now dividing Republicans in a way he wasn't previously. Give us your assessment as you see it of Donald Trump, but particularly his relationship with this country. Will Trump be good for the United Kingdom? Our lines are open. You're watching Talk TV. We're live from the Talk Radio studios.